Let me just introduce our speaker to the stage, Katie Dobble, on the transition to a life and a career you love. Katie is a motivational speaker and a stage 4 cancer thriver. I love that distinction. From a young age, Katie was a social butterfly, quick to make friends and good at keeping in touch. She translated that innate ability to connect and build strong relationships into a successful career as a headhunter and a recruiter. In 2013, Katie was diagnosed with ocular melanoma, which left her blind in her left eye. The following year, doctors discovered it had spread to her liver and in 2018 to her brain. She continues her passion of connecting people professionally, but faced with an incurable cancer, Katie found her priorities in life shifting. We're really excited to hear from Katie on how to capitalize on life's transitions, especially during such disruption, and couldn't be more timely. Please welcome to the virtual stage, Katie Dobble.
Hi, everyone. Happy 34th Friday of quarantine, but who is counting? I'm going to just start off today with my favorite meme. And one of the things that I've really loved about COVID is all of the hysterical memes that have come out. So this one literally made me snort when I saw it. And I very much hope that today is not boring for you. As you can see by my super sexy haircut, I've had to be extra careful this year. And what started as a scary threat to someone living with stage 4 cancer, but stable for the last 3.5 years, turned even more terrifying when in May, I learned those stable tumors in my liver, very on brand with 2020, nearly doubled in size. At the start of the pandemic, I was thinking, thank God I'm not in treatment, because how would I manage that on top of the anxiety of what's happening? And here we are. I've gone to Pittsburgh 5 times this year and spent 17 days in the hospital there in September getting a pretty intense therapy. It was my 9th treatment and my 4th clinical trial in the last 7 years. Here are some pictures of me in the hospital, and that is actually my boob. I came out of interventional radiology and I looked down and I said to the nurses, oh my God, you gave me a nipple tassel. And so I became known as the girl with the nipple tassel in room 527. So today I'm going to talk to you about my career and my dreams and how my illness has given me the courage to create the life I want to live. My hope is that I will challenge you to envision what that life looks like and encourage you to not wait for a life-threatening disease to create it, to transition now. I'll start with the 25-year-old version of myself, and I assure you I'm about to do some pretty serious oversharing in a very big way. In my mid-20s, as a virgin, I managed to contract an STD through skin-to-skin contact. I had a serious boyfriend at the time, and I was living in Minneapolis working at a boutique product development agency as an account manager. I went from this radiant, confident version of myself who was certain in her career, friendships, and relationship to a scared, lonely, insecure woman shadowed in shame. Warts are typically burnt off, and that's the end of it. But for me, they persisted like mother effers and spread like wildfire to the point that I had to have surgery on my lady parts. My biggest fear in life was someone learning my dirty little secret. I didn't dare tell anyone apart from one of my closest girlfriends. And I finally got the courage to break up with the guy and move to Denver to be close to my sisters. That was 12 years ago next month. I was worried about moving here. I associated transitions with negativity because the first big transition I experienced in my life was the loss of my mother when I was 15 years old from pancreatic cancer. I understand now that was not just a transition, that was trauma. And in addition to my sisters living here, I had a couple good girlfriends who were here as well, which really helped me to settle in. I am also a massive friend hoarder. So any chance I have to make new friends, I'm very, very excited. So I made it my mission. I made networking an art form and I called it net boozing. Excuse me, sorry. And I pushed that slide too early. I landed a job at a roof consulting firm, which is exactly as sexy as it sounds, as a marketing manager. And then I was in 5 different sports leagues. So this is me getting my face smacked playing Gaelic football. I was out on the town every single night of the week, going from Gaelic football practice to pubs or to a Denver Young Professionals happy hour to a Snuggy pub crawl, which is also pictured here. I still had my secret, and as long as I wasn't home, I didn't have to face myself. Every time I looked in the mirror at home, I either frowned or ugly cried. Despite roofing not being quite as sexy as it sounds, I loved that job. And for the first time, I had a boss who saw me for my strengths, not my weaknesses. One encounter while we were out to eat on a work trip was one of my aha moments in my career. And I'll talk about more of these today. I was chatting up the server, and when he walked away, I said to my boss, I get the biggest kick out of talking to a complete stranger and finding common ground. And he said to me, Katie, you just described my worst nightmare. What? Not everybody likes talking to strangers? This part of me was so innate that it never dawned on me that other people might not like it or might not be good at it. Until then, I had no idea this was my greatest strength. He continued to encourage this strength of mine, and he would give me responsibilities that would play off of it. But in the end, I wasn't that jazzed about roofs. And so I felt this plateau coming on, which is the way I described every job I'd had to date, where after a year and a half, I felt like I'd kind of risen up and then I just sort of flatlined and hit my ceiling. By chance, I was introduced to a recruiter. I'd never worked with one before, but I decided to reach out. I was desperate to find a career. I wanted something to stick. I was tired of job hopping. So I met with a recruiter, and after asking her questions at the end of my interview, I told her, you have my dream job. I was always the one getting people jobs and connecting anyone who needed anything, and I did not know that you could make a living out of it. Around that time, a friend suggested I do StrengthsFinder by Tom Rath, which I highly recommend. I learned my strengths are communicator, empathy, maximizer, and positivity. My number one strength is woo, which stands for winning others over, which is basically somebody who wants to bring everyone into their network and then make sure everyone's all connected. A couple of months later, a spot opened up on the recruiter's team. And when I interviewed for the job, I said, I'm an obsessive connector, a strong communicator, and a very empathetic person. I was told I would succeed, and I did. I enjoyed the new challenge of my new career path, but I was still personally miserable. Anyone who knew me thought I was this outgoing, happy person. But when I got home, I was anxious and sad. I longed to meet someone, but I couldn't make it past the first date for fear of intimacy and having to tell my secret. Around the time I started what would become a decade-long and counting career in recruiting, I told my OBGYN how unhappy I was, and he gave me the number of a dear friend of his named John Marie. She's a therapist, and he made me promise I would go see her. I'd never been to therapy. I had just taken this huge pay cut for this commission-based job that I wasn't sure would pan out. But I was so desperate. I was just desperate to be happy again and desperate to be loved and desperate for a change. I could do a whole TED Talk on therapy, but we don't have time for that today. All I'll say is this, for 4 years, those warts clung to my body, and 4 months in therapy, and they went away, never to return. Shortly after therapy, things finally started to turn around. I landed the biggest project in the history of my team and went from number 240 on the scorecard nationally, probably out of 240, to number 2 for the entire summer, and I was killing it. I got an actual boyfriend, my confidence came back with a vengeance, and I was finally feeling happy again and confident again. The guy ended up being a tool in the end, but he served his purpose. The project at work ended, but I was on a roll. So the warts were gone. Therapy had helped me finally process my mom's death. I was dating again, and I'd found my dream job. So it was all good, right? Except that we are constantly evolving and life just keeps throwing punches. In May of 2013, a black line danced across the windshield as I was driving to meet with a client. I called my ophthalmologist and they asked me to come in the following morning. As I was driving in that morning, my left bra strap snapped, and I foolishly said these words out loud. Hopefully, that's the worst thing to happen to me today. Those were really stupid words. In less than 2 hours, I'd be diagnosed with ocular melanoma, a rare form of cancer that affects 6 in a million people. I had an actual tumor inside my eyeball. My team was amazing and very supportive. And as I navigated my treatment plan, they were quick to cover for me and give me time off. In less than 2 weeks, I'd undergo a week of radiation to my left eyeball, which would leave me blind in my left eye, and totally secure the cool aunt status. And for the record, I've still got it. I emerged from treatment 22 days post-diagnosis as a cancer survivor. My perspective had forever changed, literally and figuratively. I started to question everything in my life but my career. At the time, my work was my constant. And I learned from the biopsy that they did during treatment that my cells were as low risk as possible, and that there was a less than 2% chance of metastatic disease, meaning that it would spread to any other part of my body. So I experienced this life high and tried to process what it all meant. Meanwhile, work. Business development was my main responsibility. An ad call is when you call on a posted position to see if a company needs help filling the role. Most people don't like doing them. I'm weird, and ad calls are my favorite. I saw a posting for a web content writer at booking.com. I love new business development, so I was excited to research the company and figure out who the hiring manager was, which is how I landed on the LinkedIn page of my future husband. Nick was the hiring manager, so I reached out and pitched a candidate to him to fill a role. Soon we were exchanging flirtatious emails via LinkedIn. You can read the whole story on my LinkedIn homepage. We met to network 7 years ago this month. Suddenly, Nick became my constant. We dated for a year, and he bought a ring and planned to propose to me on Thanksgiving Day in 2014. 2 days prior, I went in for my biannual liver ultrasound. Even though there was a less than 2% chance that it would spread, my doctor recommended ultrasounds twice a year. The previous scan was totally clean. I left the hospital and went to work. And that afternoon, as I was chatting with a graphic designer client in Niwot, my phone started ringing incessantly in my pocket. I got into the car and I had a voicemail from the oncologist herself asking that I call her back right away. I called her back, practically panting. They had discovered a dozen suspicious lesions in my liver. Nick still proposed, and that Thanksgiving remains the most emotional day of my life. A biopsy the following day confirmed I had stage 4 incurable cancer. My dad, an internist, went into agent mode and spoke to doctors all over the country to determine the best course of treatment for me. The day after my 33rd birthday, which is on New Year's Day, I flew to New York City to enroll in a clinical trial at Memorial Sloan Kettering. I'd spend 5 weeks there, then fly back indefinitely every month. Again, my team was amazing and supportive. My company had an office in Midtown, so I got to go into work in New York City every single day and FaceTime with my team. I managed side effects like a full body rash, constant diarrhea, fatigue, and loss of appetite. January 2015 was the busiest month of my career, which is great because I needed the distraction. I flew home in early February and married Nick 14 days later. In April, I made it to my company's President's Club award ceremony in Las Vegas. As the CEO spoke the first night, he said, "We hope to see you all again here next year." I hope I'm alive next year, I thought in all sincerity. I was, and I was back in Vegas. In 2015, I flew to New York City over a dozen times for what I called my drug deal, where I picked up my medication. In August, I was booted from that trial due to tumor growth, and we were left scrambling again for another plan. In September, I enrolled in a clinical trial at UC Health that I was quickly eliminated from. In November, I received a liver embolization to half of my liver. Through all that, I had my best performance ever at work that year. When I went to Vegas again to accept an award in April of 2016, I met one of the big dogs at my company. Before he could finish shaking my hand and I could finish introducing myself, he was walking away from me. He didn't even make eye contact. That That was the most pivotal moment in my career. I was fighting for my life and busting my ass. For what? This guy? Why? What was it all worth? He didn't care about me. He cared about his multi-million-dollar salary. I was just a number to him. Whether I was working somewhere else or literally dead, I was dispensable. Everything shifted in that moment, and the wheels started turning. My liver responded really well to the embolization, and I spent the first half of 2016 not in treatment. It was glorious, and the break gave me a chance to process everything that was buzzing around in my head. By June, I came to the realization that I needed to cut back at work. From the get-go, I'd been asked, "Why are you still working?" I needed work to keep me from planning my funeral in my head that first year. But the second year of my fight, I was more self-assured, and I think part of that was a positive response that I was having to treatment. I went to management and asked to have Fridays off. It was met with reluctance and a "where is this coming from" attitude, as I'd not even been in treatment that year. I explained that I worked all week and I was a wife all weekend, and I just needed a day to myself to get a grip, whether that meant getting a massage or catching up on medical bills or doing laundry. I just needed to process everything that was happening. I explained that living with a terminal illness was isolating, and I was told that I wasn't the first person to go through something that nobody understood. Another very pivotal moment in my career. Suddenly, this decision that I'd been a little bit unsure about was the best decision I would make professionally. I was also told it was a slippery slope, and it meant one foot out the door. I was hurt by this comment as I thought I had proven my work ethic during the biggest challenge of my life. They agreed to let me cut back, and that moment stayed with me and ultimately turned out to be true. It was one foot out the door. The following week, I learned my tumors grew again, and we were back to the drawing board with treatment. I was so happy with my decision at work. I lasted 3 months in that third clinical trial, which was the first time I lost my hair. When I was booted from that one, the rest of my liver received the embolization, and I would remain stable in my liver for 3.5 years. Having Fridays off gave me a chance to recalibrate. It gave me time to process what I was going through. It gave me clarity to realize what I really wanted to do with my life. I loved recruiting, but I also wanted to share my story. I wanted to speak to audiences and write a memoir. I felt like I had to be quiet about my dreams at work. I felt like I couldn't have both. I did ultimately leave that job to work for a smaller agency 3 days a week. In May of 2018, stroke-like symptoms led to a brain MRI that discovered an alleged tumor on my brain. I had a Gamma knife procedure, which is super fun. This headgear is attached to your head, and they use 4 screws to screw all the way to your skull, and then they give you the radiation. My brain has been stable since, and there was a point that we thought I'd have to go back to New York City right after the brain diagnosis. And management at my new company was really concerned about how that would affect their business. This again left me questioning everything. Then I found the universe bitch slapping me with a message. A colleague bought me Danielle Laporte's daily journal called "What I Will Do to Feel the Way I Want to Feel." And I'll include this in my last slide if anyone is interested. I learned about this same concept in a book I was reading. And then I went to see my energy healer. I told her I wasn't happy at work, but that I was going to give it 6 more months. "Katie, how do you want to feel?" she asked me. "How do you feel when you go to work every day?" To which I replied very maturely, "How do you feel when you share your story?" I was starting to see where she was going with this. She told me I put conditions on everything. If this, then that. And that I needed to quit worrying about the logistics and just focus on the feels. In 2019, I cut the cord completely, and I took time off work to travel and to work on my book and to really figure things out. Turns out I can't really afford retirement quite yet, and I'm not ready for it. I'm a busybody. I spent 2019 really thinking about what my dream life looked like. I still loved recruiting and ad calls. I started doing speaking engagements and patient advocacy and sexual health advocacy. And I got my memoir in shape to work with an editor. Last fall, I decided I wanted to start my own headhunting business. So I asked a former colleague, Ted Helmuth, head of IQ Clarity, to coffee to pick his brain. 15 minutes in, he asked me to join his team and start the creative and marketing recruiting side of his business. I explained my passions and my 4-day work week habits, and he fully supported me. It was a no-brainer. I didn't really want to run my own business. I just wanted to do what I loved. This May, when we learned my pesky tumors had grown, Ted's response was, "We've got your back, whatever you need from us, Katie." When I have speaking engagements, he doesn't question my time off. When I had to go to Pittsburgh for 20 days in September, he didn't question how that would affect his business. He covered for me. I feel like I can truly do what I love and pursue my passions, and I finally have this balance that I've been looking for. To be clear, I did not get here overnight. I got here by putting it out to the universe, by networking, by talking to people and talking through how I wanted to feel and what my goals and dreams looked like. Few companies are going to approach you and ask you about a 4-day work week, but if you ask, you never know. So today I challenge you to really think about your dream life. Are you living it already? If not, what does it look like? Is it a 4-day work week? Is it working for yourself? Is it working from home? Is it a passion project? Is it being a stay-at-home mom, dog, mom, or dad? Because I did actually do that last year. And also think about your current setup. What do you mean to your company? Are you just a number? Are you expendable? Do they know about your life goals and your passions or your dreams, or do you have to keep that a secret? We're all creatives here. So think about your dream life and figure out how to live it. And if you're not there yet, it's time to transition to a life you love. So now to explore this, I'm going to lead you in an exercise, and then we're going to do a Q&A and break into small groups after that. So in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and the first one is already up on your screen. So what I would like you to do with each question is take 60 seconds to just jot down some answers. And then when we come back together as a group, you guys can chat about it. So the first question is, how do you want to feel? And this can be many feelings. So just list them out and focus on the feels.
Katie, to clarify, this is like how we want to feel in the future or right now, but we're visualizing this.
Just identify what the feelings are and write them down, and they can be just kind of reflect on all the different emotions you feel in your life and when you feel the most, like what lights you up and what is that feeling. All right, the next question is, what are your goals? So when you imagine the ideal setup in your life, what does that look like? All right, final question. What habits will help you achieve these goals? What can you start implementing daily or weekly that will help get you where you want to be? All right. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to share my story today. This is my contact information, how you can find me on LinkedIn, my Caring Bridge site. If anyone is interested in following my journey is on, I believe, my blog page. And I wanted to give a personal update to end. I did go back for my first set of scans last week, and we're seeing a little bit of shrinking, which is really, really exciting news. So my ongoing treatment plan is I just get scanned. I'm in this clinical trial, done with the treatment, but I just get scanned every couple months or so, and we're just in monitoring mode now. So that's all.
Katie, thank you for being so vulnerable and real and raw with us. That's amazing. I want to invite everybody to actually clap with your volume off or just give her some jazzing. Katie, thank you so much.